You guys, this is such a fun panel because each of these people is like a TED talker, keynote goddess, and I hope I'm gonna learn a lot about what to do next, what to do with my life to make it slightly better, to make some change. I will stop. But I'm gonna, because you guys are better at introducing yourselves than I am, I'm gonna just ask you to do that. Is that cool? April's my producer, and yeah, and I know you more personally, so I'll be like, she wears great lipstick, she's got clean beauty, she's fun to drink wine with. So, okay, so April, tell us.
Hi guys, I'm April Uchitel, and I am the CEO of a company called The Board that I started about 4 years ago in answer to my own quest of what do I do next. And so we'll go more into that. But I spent about 25 years in fashion, and then I went to tech, and then I went to beauty, and then I've started this business, which is a community-based model. So I have a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Dr. Deepika Chopra. I am an optimism doctor. I study the science behind optimism and hope and resiliency. I did not start out doing that. I actually started out working at a punk music label, and then I was in punk rock on, and then I was in investment banking for a little bit. And so for some reason, all of this makes sense to me, where I am now, and I have a lot to talk about on that too. I have a doctorate in clinical health psychology, and like I said, I really focus on optimism. I have a brand called Things Are Looking Up, and we have a fun optimism deck of cards and a book coming out at the end of February.
Wow, you've been very busy and you're very young. I know you said you're older than you look, but
I'm
you're
not.
tiny. Okay.
I have 3 children as well, 7,
and you've
4,
been very
and 1.
fucking busy, is what I'm sensing. There's a lot of things happening. Okay, Eve, who's the queen. Raise your, if you know Eve in LA. You know her in LA, you know her in New York. She changed the conversation, not to overdo it, but about women, work, mothering. It's just fucking genius what you've done. Truly, everyone I know of it's before we turned on Cheryl, it's like the lean in, but later.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. I love your book. Deepika's book is so good. It's coming out, so let's look out for that. But yes, my name is Eve Rodsky. For those who don't know me, I wrote a book called Fair Play and then a follow-up book called Find Your Unicorn Space. I'm an expert on the gender division of labor. That was not what was on my 3rd grade. What do you want to be when you grow up bored? Which said veterinarian. And one thing I want to say, Sam, it was not what was asked of me at law school. Elizabeth Warren was our orientation professor. Wow. And before she was a senator, obviously. But ironically, before she was a senator, I said to her, when she said, what do you want to do with your law degree? I said I wanted to be a senator from New York, president of the United States, and a Nick City dancer. Because this was the Legally Blonde
You can still
era.
be all of those.
Right. Yeah. But I said I sort of wanted to do them all at the same time because I thought you could just change into your Nick City dancer costume on like Air Force One, and then you could just go to a state dinner after because it's hard. And I just want to say that smashing all those glass ceilings was what I thought I'd be doing in 2000 when she asked me that question. But if you cut to my life 10 years later, then what you would know about me is the only thing I could say I was smashing was like peas for my toddler, Zach, barely trying to hold on to a corporate job. And I think that 10 years of the expectation to what the reality is for women was so shocking to me. I never wanted another woman to go into that without a warning. Yeah. So I'm the ghost of your Christmas future. You know? Yeah.
Or Hanukkah.
Yeah.
Okay, and I have a lot to ask all of you guys about this, the phase that is upon us as we get upon some of us, as we're getting into, perhaps the kids are getting older, perhaps the job is changing, perhaps you're getting let go in this sad time of lots and lots of jobs are being taken away, and perhaps especially by from those who have caregiving responsibilities as well. And now maybe it's not the kids, it's your parents, it's your friends, it's your aunties. So I love that we have April next to optimism, not because you're pessimistic, but you're profoundly practical, which I like, because otherwise I turn into a curmudgeon-y exer where I'm like, shut up, millennial. It's not easy. It's not going to be okay. But so when you founded the board, like, are you finding great opportunity for women in a second, third chapter?
I mean, for me, the board was this idea of myself looking ahead. I'm 58. I left a CEO role during the pandemic and wasn't sure what my next thing was going to be. At the same time, I was watching so many of my peers decide at that point, I think COVID let us all reevaluate everything and determining the quality of life over the job they were having, the life they were living, whether it was forced through a layoff or they just made a conscious decision to say, I can't do this anymore. Toxic cultures, companies that they were just really struggling to hang on and get, because they had a decent paycheck and some equity and all the stuff, and decided it wasn't worth it. And so many people were reaching out to me just saying, I'm out. I left LA, I moved upstate, I sold my company, got laid off, I'm consulting. And so it became an opportunity for me to create a destination for this top talent, really with the idea of just joining forces and supporting each other through all the stuff. You go from being a title at a company to now you with your shingle and your calling and your kind of hustling. And so it was created primarily to resource each other and to share learnings and knowledge and networks. And it got to like 200 people really fast, and I was like, holy crap, like there's this need, and what we also do is connect them with opportunities. And so I joke that we're the Black Amex of LinkedIn, but we're a food co-op at the same time, and I think if you think about the food co-op analogy, it's like, if you can help, you help. You got to work the register to get the discount on the oranges, and so how do you kind of bring that into a forward future of constantly upskilling? How do we stay relevant? How do we not get aged out of industry? Very female, unfortunately, happens to us more so than men. And how do you continue to evolve? And so being able to do that in community, to me, was the best way forward, because of all the reasons we also leave companies when you've kind of armored up and you just can't hold your breath anymore. Allowing for this real vulnerability, this real place of sharing and co-creating, which is what I really love at how it's evolving, but to give everybody each other in a way. And I see this more and more. There's so many communities, that are popping up in this way of supporting different intentions, female founders, VCs, people that are just doing that exact thing. And we can all look around and we kind of have our own board of experts. I'm sure you guys each other, help each other, reviewing things, talking through things, and being able to workshop all the what's next is where I found the power that can initially feel like a negative or a loss or a backslide, but what it really is allowing you to think about, we call them superpowers, the stuff you really love to do, that you're really good at, where you're trying to get to, and then lean into people around you to say like, hey, you do that, how can I get there? Where do we, whether it's AI or all the stuff that's happening so fast, how do we give each other cheat sheets? How do we support each other that way?
And I think that's, I would say, I don't know which I met from whom. You were probably JJ. I didn't know your incredible expertise and talent until Eve recommended you. You gave us someone else, Pooja, who was on stage with us at South by. So you guys are curatorial geniuses. And I think that is a unique skill also. You can be like, hey, X meet Y, and it's not a fit. And then, those are the coffees and drinks that I don't want to go to anymore, but you do a really genius job of finding people and setting up context. I feel like that's kind of uniquely female, yes. And that is, something to be optimistic about. So opine, darling.
Yeah, well, it's just so interesting because when I heard you, I know April personally, and it's fun for me to be able to sit here and hear like
my evolution.
Yes, and it is so optimistic. And I'm sitting here thinking, and one of the things I was thinking about, what is so intrinsic as females that we can bring to the table. And that literally, when she's speaking, I'm like, well, we are better at interpersonal communication. We have a real knack for intuition. We have really radical empathy, like your hat over there. And these are all things that we are intrinsically, these are our skills, but they're not just, we don't just come with a skill, we also come with a story. And our intuition is so big. We have been put into systems and rooms that we were not welcome in, and that is something that sucks, but guess what? That is a skill now. That is part of your resilient story, and only someone with all that could create what you have just created. Like, that is so, how do you not be optimistic about that? And it's this stage of life, through that, knowing yourself and having that wisdom and finally being and getting to do who you currently are, not who we are told to be, that I think, there's a lot of struggle we talked about in this time, in this season of our lives, and we named all of it. But I think we often forget to look or overlook like the creativity that lies here and the unique position we're in that is just, it's very hopeful, and we're living longer. And so
and what are we going to do with all that time is what we have to ask Eve, because you have, you gave us back, I think, a lot of us some agency and credit. And so if we are living longer, when we're really focused on is living better for longer, living the Peter Attia health span, we'll borrow it. But when you contemplate that all your sisters who you've buoyed up are going to be living longer, we hope healthier, we hope dominating instead of receding into the background after 50, which we see a lot of evidence of here. How do you contemplate that as you always set up good business? Like, you set up the rubric.
Well, thank you. I mean, I still sit on panels where the advice for creativity is get in your flow state by having 3 or 2 uninterrupted days a week.
yeah,
Women were...
Raise your hand if you have that.
impossible.
So you know who would say that, right? The only person who could say that is somebody who is a man. Who is a man. Has a day, as my sons will say. And so I think you cannot talk about... You cannot talk about creativity without understanding unpaid labor. Yeah. And I did write a second book, but if I had written a second book that told you to all have 2 uninterrupted days a week, you should throw me out and stone me. Right. So I think for me, the first act of resistance to understanding my own creative life and my own loss of identity after I was smashing those peas for a toddler was understanding that women like you, it was a breast cancer march. I write about this in Fair Play. I was at a breast cancer march for a friend who was diagnosed. This was 2011, downtown Los Angeles. We were all covered in glitter, which was amazing. It was a Saturday morning. We were wearing pink. We felt super empowered until noon. And then I started watching these women all retreat to their phones. And it was really alarming. And I was looking over their shoulder, and I was seeing things like, where'd you put Hudson's soccer bag? When are you coming home from the parade? The parade, that was funny. Where is the birthday party? And are you going to bring me a gift, or did you leave me a gift? I was starting to get more angry. And then I have the text that I still keep screenshot on my computer, which was my friend Kate's husband. And that said, do the kids need to eat lunch?
And Google it. Put it in AI. I don't know. She doesn't. Does she need you?
There was like one man sitting in the audience, right? I'm just laughing. But I think that's the context. We have to understand you can't be creative. And so what was so hard for me was watching those women. It didn't feel optimistic because they didn't shut their phones down and say, oh, they'll deal with it. We're going to go to lunch. It was all these women that said, I left my partner with too much to do, and they left me. We didn't go to lunch. They didn't have that hour to maybe connect or to make those connections or to maybe have an idea that a friend would suggest, to have that open mind, to have more of the creative freedom of wearing glitter and wearing pink. They left to go bring the perfectly wrapped gift to a birthday party. They left to go find Hudson's soccer bag and to feed their kids lunch. But what I will say is I had a revelation that day that I would ask them to help me count up how many phone calls and texts we had received. We had 30 phone calls and 46 texts for 10 women over 30 minutes. Wow. And the reason why I tell you that is because it's okay if you're not creative. Right. It's okay if you haven't, found a hobby, which connotes in frequency. But what I will say to you is there are certain steps you can start taking. Understanding that the hurdle of unpaid labor will always be there for us. It is the assumption. One woman said to me, and then I'll open it up. She said to me, what fair play taught her was that she doesn't have a magical vagina that whispers in her ear what her husband's mother wants for Christmas. And so if we understand, right, that we don't have to feel guilty if we're not a parent, partner, and a professional on repeat, that's where we start to regain our creative practices. What I like to say, the metaphor, is to put your own initial back on your neck. We're given the mom necklace the second we get back from the hospital as a gift of love. We're called mom in the doctor's office. So what my kids only see is my initial on my neck. Not today, because I forgot to put my necklace on. Start to take off your kids' names from your hands, your jewelry, your neck. Put your own initial on as a reminder that they should know who you are, that you're not just a parent, partner, and professional on repeat. I need to bring up that context because there's no way for you to be creative and to have those uninterrupted days. And I give you permission to not be unavailable, because you are available to everybody right now, because that's the expectation of women in a capitalist patriarchy. So we start there, and then we can rebuild with small steps.
I love it. And we can be unavailable. We can be unavailable. And is it coming back around, guys, with as we contemplate the next phase? It's not necessarily a next phase. There's lots of things happening. How would you recommend that the women in the room, that I proceed in a way that will allow me to have a dope, meaningful, impactful career when I'm 79? Or 72.
I mean, to me, when someone said, you've pivoted so many times, I'm like, it's not a pivot, it's an evolution, like they lead into the next. And so it's not about like, shit, now I gotta go figure a whole other world out, what's drawing you, what's pulling you forward, where do you want to put your energy, whether it becomes, social good, nonprofit work, full shifts. One of our members was at McKinsey and L'Oreal, and she's like, I'm doubling down on femtech. Who here does femtech? And someone literally said to me, like, this is where I feel like I'm being pulled. I've never done it before. I'm like, find the people who have and figure out how they, it's the same thing I tell my 19-year-old daughter, and so we need to be constantly looking ahead. And I was just with my mom this weekend in Colorado. She's 84, and she said to me, she's like, just wait till you become invisible. And it was the most heartbreaking. And that's how she feels. And I don't feel that way at all. And I know my daughter doesn't feel that way at all. The generations that are empowered, knowing the road is long, right? We're all playing the long game. No one is just gonna figure out the next 6 months, right? And I think looking ahead and knowing everything you're doing is building this journey that you're on, and the twists and turns. And I made decisions to take step backs to learn new industries and come back around this way. And people are like, what are you doing? We take the ego out at this age. We don't give a fuck. What someone thinks of us, and your circles get smaller, but hopefully they get deeper. And then you're just more open to like, oh, they're interesting, but with a very vulnerable exchange. Like we sat in the back and talked in 2 seconds, blowjobs, kids, like it just is like, we're like,
still do that?
I don't know. No.
The kids. That
I'm
we're
not recorded,
kids.
right? No, talking to our kids about blowjobs. But in 5 seconds while we're getting ready to come up here, it's like the pretense. We just don't have time,
You will always be visible, man, in those glasses and that red lip and that fucking hair. There is no chance that don't ever stop that, please. And you end us on an optimistic note.
I would honestly just add that it sounds simple, but all the research shows that we are our most resilient and productive selves if we are celebrating our wins. And it literally can be something like, I'm a big believer of, if I see another article on a woman's 12-step morning routine for self-care, I won't tell you what I'll do. But it just doesn't make sense. And so you have to things have to be realistic, and they have to fit into your life. Otherwise, we're just being fed the same thing, and we're being set up for failure. And I think that this idea of celebrating your wins is so important, regardless of what season you're at. And it's something that research shows us is so little. You can focus on feeling a sense of joy from whatever it is for 12 seconds. That is enough time to rewire your brain to look for more joyful experiences. and extra bonus points if you can celebrate or have a sense of self-gratitude. You're skipping the brain process, and it's something that we as humans do that is so important when you reach a goal and then you're just like, and then what's next? We have something called a negativity bias, and it makes it so that we are just focused on what is wrong or what can be better. And I'm telling you that there is research after research that we have found in neuroscience that you need to intentionally start to do the opposite. Take that time to marinate in something joyful or something you're proud of. It will take you so much further.
Agreed. And this is I love this. It's like hard out, get up.
It's like in really big letters, by the way, guys.
These are all people to follow and to know, and we are going to be celebrating their achievements forever. And thanks, you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.